What's up, everybody? This is Gaby, Staten Island. It's a beautiful morning here in Sonoma County. Doing a little camping with the family today, and wanted to make an announcement. We have another episode of Your Weed Stories today with my friends John and Nancy. They owned hydro stores in the Deep South during Operation Green Merchant and Prohibition, and they have some amazing stories. They even had the cops stop by and knock on their door during this podcast. So it was interesting to say the least. Hope you guys enjoy it. Finally got back on the editing. Got my dad helping me. Thanks, Dad. And so I hope you guys enjoy the show. Before we get started, I did want to say people have been reaching out saying how they can support the podcast. The best way to support the podcast is to go to my website, GabySI.com, and check out our offerings. Hopefully you'll find something that you like. People have been pretty excited about the sour diesel, and we've got a whole bunch of new stuff that we're adding, including some seeds. So yeah, check us out, GabySI.com. That's GABYSI.com, and I hope you enjoy the show. What's up, everyone, and welcome to Your Weed Stories. Today we're joined by my friends John and Nancy, who are real OGs with a deep history in cannabis, including owning the first grow shops in the South of the United States. And I had been connected with John on Instagram, and then we just realized how much we had in common, and I just really wanted to have them share their story. They have a really interesting story that, I think most of you won't really know much about. They owned hydro stores during the Green Merchant days and beyond. And, with that, we're going to let John and Nancy tell their weed story. Welcome to the show.
Thank
you for having us, Gaby. Really appreciate it. Excuse me. Well, I've been involved in cannabis since the 70s. I first started smoking weed back in, I think it was 1968, and did not actually get high the first time I smoked, and not least that I was aware of. But I was determined to try this stuff, because I liked the taste of it, but I didn't get high, but I was determined to try. So I went to this guy's house. I remember his name. His name was Jeff Tully. This is back in like 1970, I'd say, something like that. I was still in high school. I was probably 17 years old, maybe 18, 17. I was still in high school living with my parents. And, so I went and got this, what was called Panama Red, quote, quote. And it was like basically ground up, looking back on it, was just ground up weed that looked like somebody had taken buds and put it like through a colander or something. It was just all no seeds or anything in it, which was unusual for the time because basically everything had seeds in it, but this didn't. But I rolled 2 joints of it, which was difficult because I didn't know how to roll a joint, but I rolled 2 joints of it. And went out into the woods in my subdivision where I lived, and hotboxed 2 joints in a row. Didn't know anything about dosing. Didn't know anything about how high I would get. I was just determined to actually feel the effects of this product. So I hotboxed 2 joints and got so stoned. I was like tripping, walking through my neighborhood at my parents' house, where we lived. And the fronts of houses looked like faces. Long story short, I was totally wasted. So unbeknownst to me, well, of course, I had to go home and go back to my room. And my mother was in there. Of course, she was quite an alcoholic. She was drinking all the time. And we had just moved into this beautiful home in Louisville, Kentucky. And it had nice white carpet and everything. It was a beautiful home. And I walked in after having been in the woods in the mud and didn't realize my feet were full of mud. And I walked in and real casually, "Hey, Mom, how's it going?" And she says, "So stop right there. Turned out I had mud all over my feet and it got all over the carpet. And my mother was just freaking out, which turned out to be kind of a good thing because then she wasn't concentrating on how stoned I was. And so, long story short, she got all her cleaning implements and stuff and started trying to clean up the mess. Meanwhile, I walked back up to my bedroom and sat there in the bedroom, and I was just like, "Oh my God!" I was just so high, and I thought right then and there, I'm going to have a lifelong relationship with this plant, and that's basically where my story begins.
And your mom had no idea that you were high?
No idea whatsoever. She was so focused on getting her house cleaned up that she could care less about the condition I may have been in.
Yeah, my relationship with cannabis began with Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
I had an older sister, and someone gave her a Frank Zappa album for Christmas, and I was probably about 10 years old when she received it. And she thought it was so bizarre. She was a Neil Diamond person, right?
That's a pretty extreme Neil Diamond to Frank Zappa.
Yeah, well, it was someone that wasn't a close friend. Anyway, she gave her this Frank Zappa album, and she thought it was so weird and so bizarre. And I pulled that thing out and put it on the turntable. I was like, I don't know what this is all about, but I like it. And I was about 10, so I was already alternative and kind of pushing the envelope as a 10-year-old, and that was a 10-year-old in 1969, right? So then when I was 12, I was seeking weed, and I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and we had the Toys for Tots concerts every year around Christmas time, which they'd have a bunch of local bands. You'd take a toy to get in. They would donate all the toys to, needy kids. So I was 12. I wasn't allowed to go to concerts, but I was allowed to go to Toys for Tots. So I came up with a plan with a friend of mine. We went to Toys for Tots, of course, because, where else to find weed but at a concert, right?
For kids.
Yeah, and this was like, I guess, in 71. And we just walked around till we saw somebody smoking a joint. Then we positioned ourselves behind them and just waited. And sure enough, they passed it over to us.
And you were 12?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And how old were they?
Oh, they were probably about 17, 18. They were older. And we got that first hit, and that was it. That was the path, and just went from there. I mean, when I was 14 and 15, I was making crock pot butter in my parents' garage when when they'd go on trips, or they had a lake lot, so they'd be gone a lot on the weekends. And I would just fire up all that crock pot butter. So I was really into edibles. That was kind of my thing and what I was interested in. Interestingly, as you can see behind me, it's a wall full of edibles. So that's my edible brand now. But
I thought that was your head stash.
well, we could call it that, But yeah, that's how I got started, and been part of my life ever since.
Well, that's really cool. Well, we don't want to move too far into the present before we get more of the past. So tell us some more of your weed stories from the past, and how you got to where you are today, and eventually how you got to your hydro store.
Well, I'll start, and then I'll pass on to John. I mean, it's a lifestyle. If you smoke, it's always a lifestyle. But until I met John, I never grew. I never even sold weed. I bought weed. And then I gave away edibles. So I never really connected those dots. And then I was waiting tables, TGI Fridays. I was a Fridays person for years. And that's how we met. We met at TGIF. I was waiting on him at a table, and he seemed like a pretty cool guy. And I was down in Florida working too. I was traveling with Fridays. So we met. I went to Florida. We never really got together. And then I came back because my mother had terminal cancer. And that is when I really got into medical uses of cannabis. And that took me on that path. And that's also when John and I reconnected. And the rest kind of is history. So I'll turn it over to you, John. He had a lot more experience than I did. He introduced me.
Well, I think it's really cute that we got to tell the story about how you guys met. You know, that's something that'll last forever on the internet as well. You know, for your children and stuff. So I think that's
Oh
cool.
yeah.
So go ahead, John.
Well, what would you like to know?
Well, tell about your early days when you started growing with that halide before we were together.
Okay, well, basically, I had gotten a bunch of books and by Murphy Stevens for one, and of course Ed Rosenthal and Mel Frank et al. And all the good players. And when the books came out, I was already growing a lot of houseplants. As you can see behind me, I have a lot of houseplants. But I was already growing a lot of houseplants, and the books came out, and I was like, "What the hell? I could probably actually grow something to make some money." And so I already had a green thumb, and so I started, growing pot. And well, the first time I grew it was outdoors with a friend of mine who's now deceased. His name was Bill Kennedy, and that was in the 70s. And we built a greenhouse in the early 70s and grew in a greenhouse. And then when the books came out about growing indoors, I got on board with that because I was already growing houseplants and stuff. So yeah, I just got into it, and kind of the rest is history.
So the first time you grew outside was that bag seed?
Yeah, it was some Mexican seed that we had from some early Mexican, and it was actually pretty good.
And
Then,
you didn't
then
know
in
anyone
the
that was
early,
growing. This is something you just
yeah,
did
I
on
was the
your
only
own.
one growing, and in the late 70s, I started growing indoors. Um, I started getting books and stuff, and started going indoors. And the first time I grew, it was not like kind of a disaster because I didn't really know what I was doing.
Let's talk about how we started. Because the way we got started, if you recall, is your buddy. I was still bartending and waiting tables. Of course, just day to day, needed to make money. He was selling weed, and his buddy, I can't remember, somebody thought you were hot, or there was something that went wrong, and he could not acquire inventory, basically.
I
And
think that was that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
so we were tight on money. And he showed me a picture in High Times magazine of an indoor grow and was like, I can do this. Let's do it. And I mean, it was all about money for me. I wasn't like passionate about growing at that time. I was just like, okay, let's do it. And then he masterminded the whole setup and cobbled it together with stuff from electrical, companies. And as he said, it was a massive fire hazard too. So go on.
Yeah, we had this umbrella that was painted silver that acted as a reflector,
Oh, so not an umbrella reflector, an actual umbrella.
an actual umbrella painted silver, and it was like a horrible fire hazard. But and then I ordered a special track that was from a company, some unknown company back in the day, and it was made out of what appeared to be a garage door opener. When I ordered it, I didn't know that's what it was. That's essentially what it was, and it didn't fit in the area that I had, so I had to put it in, at an angle, from corner to corner rather than like parallel, and to get it to fit in there. And it had like this chain drive, motor driven sort of situation. It was really an archaic dinosaur kind of setup, but I managed to make it work, and we grew a few plants, and I managed to get some phenos out of that were absolutely exceptional. And I went on to get some lights from Worms Way up in Bloomington, and started getting better quality, systems, and actually had nice setups, and that enabled me to get a much better result, rather than using an umbrella that was a fire hazard.
Oh, I mean,
Hey,
I would have loved to. I know you're a photographer, and I'm also confident that you don't have a photo of this, but that would be an awesome photo to see. This is what growing was like, in in the 80s. We would use a actual umbrella as a reflector.
yeah,
That's,
I might add that everybody thought we were batshit crazy
I mean, you
and
were.
did not think it could be done. And we were, and basically, still are probably, really. But, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I had a friend of mine, I proposed to him that I was going to start growing indoors, and because I started researching some of the books by Ed Rosenthal et al. And I told people that I was going to do this indoor growing, and they were like, "Oh, that's never going to work. If those lights worked as good as you think they would, everybody be doing it." I said, "You watch me." And I got the books and started reading them, and set up an indoor lighting system. And before I knew it, I was off and running.
Did we get our seeds from Neville at that time, or did we acquire those later? Because I can't remember.
Well, basically, I had what I called the Emerald Fire, which was something I got out of some bag seed, which was an amazing variety. I don't really know what it was, but it had a lot of Afghan in it. I'm presuming, but it was an amazing variety. And then Neville came out with a seed catalog, and I proceeded to order seeds from Neville because I thought, well, if what I have is good, what he's got is probably better. Turned out what I had was actually very excellent. Not to diminish what he had, because he was an awesome breeder, and put out some amazing stuff, which I to this day really revere. But the bottom line is that first variety that we had, which was I called it Emerald Fire, which was just an amazing, amazing plant, and just an unbelievable quality product.
Yeah, like potting it up, and I think we started with 3 gallon pots at the beginning, and Pro Mix, and just a couple little add-ins. And I remember, working on getting the cloning down. It was a mystery. There wasn't much help.
That's
John had
what
a
I wanted to ask you because John was mentioning the phenotypes, and I was like, you so early you got into cloning, because all of us we got into cloning much later. We were seed growers, there were seeds.
yeah.
But please continue how you were going into cloning and where did you read about it or what information you got in that times.
Well, at the time, there was information, like in high times and stuff. But basically, I was already into taking cuttings of houseplants and stuff, and I thought, why not take clones of this? And so with the strings of information that were available, plus my knowledge of plants, I just thought, well, I'm going to start cloning the better plants that I see. Before I knew it, I was, picking phenotypes and cloning off the best ones, starting seeds and picking out the best girls that I liked and that I thought were appropriate to grow. And it just kind of snowballed.
And he was freaking fanatical, of course, which made for excellent grows. I remember like talking about old days and what you would go through. I mean, we were just buying Pro Mix And we did graduate to going up to Martin's place in Bloomington, which that did come. But there was like Super Thrive and powdered Hormex, or it wasn't even Hormex. I can't remember the name of it now.
Rootone?
Yes, root tone.
Rutone.
Yeah.
And
That was the first cloning material that I used was Rutone.
Yeah, the truth is that stuff is probably better than all the stuff that they're using today still.
Make a
The gels and
slurry
stuff.
with it,
Yeah, that
right?
stuff actually really works. That and dip and grow. Dip and grow is what I use today. Everybody's using gels and, but I find the dip and grow is a far superior
I
product.
loved dip and grow. I used to use it all the time. I haven't been using it, in more recent years, but I definitely love dip and grow.
Unpaid advertising for dip and grow. The thing that's cool about dip and grow is that you can adjust the concentration, right? So if you have
Exactly.
something that's a little bit harder to root, you can make it a little bit more concentrated.
That's right.
So
we had a good go round in that first apartment, because once that first harvest happened and there was actually sellable weed, there was no turning back at that point. We were off and running. And then, getting seeds, like writing a letter to Neville and mailing it, snail mail, and then, with, I think,
Cash.
like a postal money order, or was it cash?
No, you mailed cash. You wrapped it in carbon paper, and mailed cash.
And then waiting for those seeds, man, and then getting a post office box because, terrified to have them come to your door. And then,
but how much
going
safer is the postal box?
Who knew, right?
Well,
It seemed safer.
I had a PO box in my name, but it was addressed to my sister's address, which she was completely on the up and up. So I had to come to the PO box, but even if they had traced it, it couldn't have gotten to where I actually lived.
Did your sister know you used her address?
Yeah, she knew. She had no problems because she was straight laced and had no issues.
Well, that's why I thought she might have a problem with it.
Right.
Well, I don't think
So
she was
I
actually
remember,
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, you
I was
go.
going to say, I remember picking those seeds up, driving around the post office, looking to see if we were being followed. Going on a rabbit trail before even entering the post office to get those things.
What's funny about that too is, I'm sure before they arrived, how high of a you were probably thinking, I just lit however many dollars on fire. I'm never getting a package back. Not even the post office or the police, but you probably just didn't think that Neville was sending you any seeds back.
Well,
right? Or were you confident that they were going to show up?
I was confident.
Yeah.
I was confident as well, and I tell you that leads to another story about Ray Kogo. Are you familiar with Ray Kogo?
I'm not.
No.
Okay, Ray Kogo was a liaison for the seed company, the seed bank, where he was receiving the seeds from Neville and distributing them through the United States. And he actually got busted and has some heat on him, and ended up working with the government and turned in all these people that ordered seeds from Neville, and that led to Operation Green Merchant and all the rest of that.
I think our seeds actually came from Amsterdam, though, didn't they? Those first seeds.
Absolutely.
I don't think Ray sent those.
Well, no. Ray actually was the go-between. Neville sent them to Ray, and Ray distributed them to the U.S.
Okay.
That's how that worked.
For everyone?
Yeah, and Ray Kogo was supposed to destroy the order list, and didn't do so. And when the heat, when the crap hit the fan, Ray Kogo turned in his seed list to the government, and that's when Operation Green Merchant went down, and all of that started to happen.
we grew for what, 2-3 years before we actually opened a hydro store. So
Right.
we had a lot of adventures. What about the body bag adventure?
Or do we want to tell this
Well,
story?
Yes.
I don't think there's any statute of limitations on murder. One thing I want to talk about or mention, John, is Ross, Bill Ross from East Coast
right.
Hydroponics. Do you know him, Nancy?
I don't know him. I know of him. Like, I've interacted with Bill in the past, but I don't really know him.
So I have such love for this guy. He sold me my first grow light, and you know, I bought Jorge's book, the legit one. You know, the Indoor Growers Bible, not the Marijuana Growers Bible. And he doesn't want to come on the show because he says, number one, he doesn't like the way he talks, and number two, he doesn't think anyone cares about his story.
Oh,
And
that's...
I did like a little post where I said, hey, who wants to see him come on the show and talk about his, experiences in Green Merchant? And everyone was like, oh my God, yeah, but, so I'm going to give everybody his phone number and email address at the end of this show. Look in the show notes, and everybody tell Bill Ross that he needs to come on the show and tell his story. But I am glad that that you guys get to tell your story about Green Merchant, because it's kind of important. People my age know about Green Merchant. Cosmic, I know we've talked about it before, but before we discussed it on the show, did you know about Green Merchant?
No, not at all.
Yeah. And how old are you?
I would say a lot of my growing came at least, definitely after medical, because in California medical was 96 or something, and that's way before I was even smoking. But yeah, a lot of my growing was when we can legally do it. Whether you had a medical card or was it 2016 California?
But you know what, Cosmic?
Legally,
it's
so
history. It's history.
Yeah, I
and
never
that's
heard of it.
How old are you, Cosmic?
37.
Yeah. So 37-year-olds today don't know about Operation Green Merchant. And
or really
Right.
what we all had to go through. And that's what I appreciate. I feel like now that we're moving into the industry, right? The cannabis industry. A lot of people that help build this industry don't get the recognition and respect they deserve. And it's important that people understand. I can tell a bunch of stories on here and laugh it up because in retrospect, it is funny. And also just the fact that we were crazy as hell and we were just out there doing this stuff.
taking risks that you don't take when you're a little bit older, right?
Adrenaline rushes, and it's fun and funny to look back on a lot of this stuff. But the reality is a lot of people, including us, suffered to make this happen and to bring these contributions. Well, and whether or not we looked at it, which John and I didn't look at it like, oh, we're building an industry. We were just doing our thing. But that's the way it was for everyone, and everybody that went through Operation Green Merchant suffered. And I don't think that should be forgotten, that is part of what brought all of this up.
I don't think it should be forgotten either, and that's one of the big reasons why I was so excited to have you guys on the show, because, the younger generation should know what we went through to get to where we're at. But now, before we talk about Green Merchant, tell us some of those crazy stories that you were talking about, Nancy, because from the comments on our show, that's what people really enjoyed the most, is those crazy, silly stories about when we, stuff, close calls and, stupid stuff that we wouldn't do today.
Those.
How
We
about
were
the situation?
growing
Go ahead.
Two
Go ahead.
locations. Remember, we had an apartment and we had a house, and we had two
Exactly.
locations going. The original location, where I believe we had already replaced our umbrella for a while, and then our other location. And I think we had like a little drip. Is that what
Oh yeah.
happened to make us
Well, what
scared?
happened
We
was
needed to break something
let,
down.
You had a
yeah. Let
leak.
me recount this story. It's really a dramatic story. I I went out of town for the weekend on a boating trip and came back on a Monday, and my neighbor came out and said, "You've got a water leak. There's water in my apartment. I didn't think you'd want to call me to call the management." So I went I went into the apartment. It turned out I had this watering wand in a Rubbermaid trash can, and unbeknownst to me, after having turned the valve on and off repeatedly for so long, it began to wear out the washer. And unbeknownst to me, it was dripping in my trash can. The watering wand was in the trash can, and it was dripping, drip, drip, drip. And eventually it filled up the trash can with water, and it began to spill out, and it went all into the apartment and into the apartment next door. And the guy came out and said, "I didn't think you'd want me to call the management." So I went in there and figured out what was going on, but it turned out the valve had worn out, and I mean, this guy was like really helpful to me. He kind of knew what was going on, but he didn't really acknowledge it. But had it not been for
When he
his
said, "I didn't think
goodwill,
you wanted me to call the management," that was acknowledging that he knew what was going on.
And he also
exactly.
said, and I don't want them at my apartment either. So
Oh.
he was also, engaging in something.
Well, I
So
always say that if you
yeah,
haven't
it
flooded your
was dramatic.
place, you're not actually growing. Cosmic looks like that happened recently to him. He was like, "Yeah, don't I know?"
Oh my gosh.
So keep on with with the stories.
Well, long story short, the apartment flooded, and I went in there and figured out what was going on and fixed the problem. But luckily for me, the guy didn't call the management. As she said, it was probably because he had his own irons in the fire as well. Didn't want to attract any attention. But yeah, it flooded the apartment next door to my apartment, and it's just a fortunate situation that didn't lead to problems. But eventually, we did have a problem there because what happened is the same guy, the neighbor, said, "Did you know you had some guys come over here and visit you at your apartment?" I said, "No." He said, "What?" I said, "What'd they look like?" He said, "Well, they were wearing suits. They were driving a Ford LTD." And I thought, "Oh my God." At that time, that's what all the police were driving, was Ford LTDs. And I thought, "Oh my God, they're on to us." So at that night, we actually moved the plants, and that's where the body bag story comes in. It was dark, and we packaged all the plants. The plants were ready to harvest, as it turns out. Smell rolling out of the place everywhere, and we packaged up the plants in contractor bags. We cut them down and put them in contractor bags, and moved them out in as dark an area as we could. And given the fact that it was an apartment, there was always a certain amount of light. We're moving these body bags, as we call them, out into our car, out into our vehicle, and moved them to another location, which is another story altogether as well. But yeah, it turned out the guy that was my neighbor saved our ass, because had he not said something, we would have probably gone on without thinking about it, and had a problem.
So
Did the
we
cops
were
show up?
frantic. They never showed up while we were there, but we were in there jamming. Let me tell you, cutting them down, bagging them up into contractor bags, putting them in. We both had our vehicles. I had some little station wagon, or
I had a
well,
station
it didn't
wagon.
matter.
I
Yeah,
had a
anyway, we
station
had the
wagon.
things loaded up with these looked like freaking body bags, driving across town to our other house so we could hang everything and dry it, right? So talk about rush. Because
it
if
was
we had gotten
crazy.
stopped, it would have looked like we had a bunch of bodies in our back seats.
Not enough time to get some cardboard boxes, huh?
Oh, we it was like no time like the present. We're cutting these things down and we're getting out of there. And then we took it all over to the house, got it all hung up, and then went back and cleaned the place up.
I have to say something. I have to interrupt you guys. Nancy, I'm just wondering, like, when people meet you, and obviously after you talk to them about your, cannabis business that we're going to get into a little bit later, you don't look like the stereotypical weed grower. You know what I
Isn't that
mean?
true?
Like,
It's hilarious.
I know it's
It's
so funny.
hilarious.
Like, like particularly down the south, people would just have no idea. And like even today, right? Like if you're just like, going anywhere, people had any idea that you carried around body bags of weed, 30 years ago or whatever it is. It's just so
Yeah,
funny to me.
I
You're not the
definitely looked like,
stereotypical weed grower, right? You don't look like that. Did you used to
aging
wear
soccer
flowery
mom.
dresses, like
Um, I guess you would say I've always been kind of like a wholesome hippie, is the best way to put it. Like I was growing organic herbs when I was, 18, 19 years old. And a lot of that was probably driven by the fact you can't stop nature. I was 10 years old. I saw Frank Zappa. I was in,
That's so
right?
funny.
But my mother ended up passing like when I was 26, but she had cancer from the time I was about 13. And so I was really fascinated with the healing nature of plants. Plus, I was just wild as hell. And, still am in a lot of ways, I guess. And very much just out of the box and wanting to, wanting to do stuff.
Hey John,
She
being
she
the
she
photographer
doesn't
that you
fit the
are,
she
she
doesn't
does
fit the
not fit the
profile,
profile.
does it? Isn't it
No.
hilarious?
But you know what? I was wondering if I could ask you to share some photos of you guys from back in the day. I'm sure you don't have the weed photos. I know that wasn't a thing.
Darn.
But I'd like to see if back then if you looked a little bit more like a weed grower than you do today.
Oh, no, I did not. In fact, I think I have some pictures on my phone.
Show us. You can just hold it up to your screen. You're not
I'll
using your
see
phone.
if I can't find
I do
them.
want you,
Yeah.
I want you to send them to us. I want to see what you guys looked like back in the day.
I have some
I have
pictures of us in our old first location when we were bluegrass high tech.
always the promoter. Always the
Yeah.
promoter.
This was
Well,
our
that place is
very
closed
first
now, so.
catalog made on, an Apple 2C something that I won, if you recall. We
I
were
do
growing
recall.
when I won it. And I had had some dental work done, and I went into a Walgreens to get a prescription filled, and I filled out some little thing to win a computer. And this is when all these Apple IICs were going into the schools and everything. Anyway, I won the computer months later, had totally forgotten about that moment. So I got a certified letter, and I had to go to the post office and sign for it. And I remember I was petrified.
You thought you were getting in trouble for seeds.
Yes, I thought I was in trouble. I was freaking out, and I won a computer, and then ended up making this beautiful, look at this, cut and
That's
paste
hilarious.
catalog. That's
Hey,
about
is
like
is
from
that the light track
89.
that you're talking about that
Yeah.
you
No,
used?
that's not the one, but that is a one.
And but
That's a
that one's
different
similar.
one.
It has the chain driven one,
Yeah. It's
right?
similar to what I was talking about. Only what I was talking about was like an old garage door opener.
It actually was a garage door opener.
I believe it was. It was modified. It was too long for the room. I put it in like perpendicular, kitty catty corner from corner to corner to make it fit. It was crazy.
And Nancy,
It worked
that
though.
catalog that you showed, that was before New Earth, right?
Oh yeah.
So when was that?
We switched over to New Earth. I mean, isn't that a cool name? Bluegrass High Tech. But we thought it was good, and that's how we opened up when we first opened our shop. And then after Operation Green Merchant, that is when we decided we realized Bluegrass High Tech wasn't the greatest name after all, but then it was time to rebrand too, because we were concerned about a lot of different things at that point. And so we decided at that time we rebrand it to New Earth. This is one of our older catalogs right after Operation Green Merchant. There's a little chunk out of it. But yeah, I brought that in too for old time's sake. And I'm going to rabbit trail for a minute. We were the first retail business to put out a catalog with content. And we did like a Q&A, and we had tips listed. We thought that was so cool, you know, where people could come on. Here's one of our tips. Oh, look at this parabolic hood, you know.
A lot nicer than the umbrella you guys started with.
Yeah, a little bit.
No question about that. Holy crap.
So tip, for best plant response, use horizontal lighting to deliver more foot candles of light to your garden area.
Read us some more of the tips in there.
Oh, check it out. This is when the light rail just got launched, FYI.
Koala
New.
Robotics.
Yeah, and then of course sun circle systems. We used sun circles when we grew.
Absolutely. They worked good, except they were a fire hazard like everything else back in the day.
Well, you had to wire your lights through them, right?
Yeah.
You know, like you.
Yeah, it
Well,
was
they
a lot-
eventually
a
they
junk-
came out with a unit that only went 180 and then spins back. But the first one
Right.
was 360 degrees, so you had to like cut your lamp cords and make them go through there. So that's why I never used it, you know, till they made the 180 degree version, because I wasn't confident in doing that.
Well, they
So
worked
when
good.
choosing your light mover, consider the dimensions of your garden. If the garden area is longer than it is wide, pick a linear light mover. If it is square in shape, utilize a sun circle.
That's great. That's still valid, you know, good advice.
Yeah. We did these, we had a good time putting these together.
Send me a photocopy. You know,
I
send me some images
will.
that including those tips. I'll edit them into the final broadcast.
I will. I mean, it's historic. Speaking of Sun Circle, what happened to Michael Christian?
I'm friends with him on Facebook, and you know he doesn't work for American Hydroponics. I think he sold the company, but I often see photos of him trout fishing with his family, and he grows dahlias. So he's still around. I'm gonna see if I can look him up on Michael Christian.
He was always very
And
nice to us and very helpful.
So here is his son trout fishing.
Oh my
Michael just
gosh.
posted that the other day. That was January 21st. So yeah, from the it's hard to tell from Facebook, but from the looks of things, he's doing pretty good. He posts some sunset
That's awesome.
pictures and yeah. But I'll reach out to him and tell him you guys say hello.
Please do.
I'll tell him I say hello too. I haven't talked to him in a minute. So now I looked at my Facebook and Jorge is liking my posts. So anyway, tell us some more.
Shout out to Jorge. Shout out to Jorge, an old friend of ours that we used to speak with on the phone all the time at New Earth.
Oh yeah. He actually listed us in one of his books, like he thanked
Gardening
contributors. Do you remember that?
Indoors. Gardening
Yeah.
Indoors, which was one of his non-cannabis related books. and we got a little blurb in the front as one of the editors, as two of the editors, I should say.
That's really
We ought
cool.
to go ahead.
He came to my shop in Willits, and he took pictures of all of our inventory. And we had some fairly cutting edge stuff for the time. Like we had some of the first tubular air cooled lights and water cooled lights, and he
Yeah.
took photos at our store, and they were in his book. So I was always pretty proud of the fact that my store ended up in his book.
That's cool. Yeah, he's a
Yeah, we
really
were
nice
really
guy. I
excited to
spoke with
talk
him
to him.
extensively. I spoke with him extensively many times. I found him to be a very affable man. I really like him a lot.
He's
Shout
humble.
out to Jorge.
Shout out to
Very,
Jorge.
very humble.
After, the body bag situation, we closed down that apartment, remember?
Exactly.
And we actually had an inside contact at the DEA office too.
Exactly.
And that was really helpful. A dude that had been a longtime friend of John's and a consumer of our product. His wife was an administrative assistant at the DEA office, so she could kind of tell us, what was going on. And we were just going to town. We had this 2-story with a basement that we moved into like suburbia. We were living there and
Right.
had it filled up. Growing in the bottom, drying, cloning, staging. So the whole house was just packed full. And we were hitting it because we were highly motivated. And we had introduced jar pot to Louisville. We were like the jar pot people. No one packed in jars back then. How'd we get the idea to pack in jars? Were we just looking, do you remember that?
I
It,
I just knew that was a good way to preserve it, and always thought jars would be the way to go. I didn't like read about it or hear about it. I just thought that was the way to go and started doing it.
marketing too, because
Well,
it was
well,
unique.
I was fanatical about keeping the pot intact, and that was the best way to keep it intact. As soon as you put it in a
Still
bag and it
is.
smashes it, it's no longer intact. And so I was a fanatic about that, and the jars just made sense.
I just wonder if people know, or let us know, how much were you selling the weed for back then?
Oh my God, 5,600 a
Huh.
pound,
And
three
what
hundred
year
and
was
fifty
that in?
dollars an ounce. Huh?
That was in like 86, 87.
You were actually giving people good deals. Because in New York
Well,
City,
believe me,
where there was
the only co-
where there was more weed, it cost more than that.
well, here's the thing, Gabby. The only complaint we ever got is why can't we get more?
So you should have charged
That was
more.
the that was the only complaint we ever got is why can't we buy more? So
Because I already have this full house filled with weed growing, and I had to give up my apartment because it was shady. So, help me get another house, then we can have more weed.
Right.
Until then, you were
I had a
maxed.
little job at that time too because, well, look at me. Of course, I want to stay under the radar, And so I had a job working as a temp as a receptionist for a while, and I'm actually a paralegal. I was working at Chi-Chi's in their legal department, and I did that for a while we were growing too, because we wanted to look really normal when all that was going on, and have money from a legal source. But yeah, we had jars stacked to the ceiling. We were doing it.
we were
And
rolling.
and we were also hot as hell, and we were very concerned. So here we are, and we're like, okay, we had a goal in mind for money. We're going to get to this goal, when we get to this goal, we are shutting down, right? And we're just going to chill for a minute. Because the jar pot had captured people's imagination. And this was this was in the mid 80s. People weren't used to indoor, people weren't used to craft cannabis, and nobody was used to jar weed. So it was gaining a real following, and we were sending a bunch down to Nashville. And John had some old friends that were in the music industry down there. They were driving up and grabbing a bunch of it and then taking it back down to Nashville. Side note, rumor has it Willie Nelson was getting it.
Also,
And
people that played with Garth Brooks and a lot of big name people were getting our pot. A lot of
yeah,
producers, and it was pretty amazing.
They needed the inspiration, you know. They
they
needed it for
did.
yeah, that was the greatest pot. Then I want to have it as a musician, it's or a producer, to hear better.
I can imagine you guys were getting pretty hot though, because you're in Kentucky. There's not a lot of other people doing what you're doing,
Oh,
and then
well,
you're
we
selling
were
the weed, and
hearing.
people tend
Yeah,
to
we were
talk too
hearing
much.
stories about. We knew some guy that was working at, I think, Fridays, that was like running his mouth about some people that he knew that lived in Middletown, Kentucky, that were growing, and he was dropping our name, and we kind of heard it through the grapevine, and we were like, "Whoa!" And that was like pretty much right before we shut down and quit.
And the reason we shut down is
Yeah,
because our friend
the
from Nashville comes up, and he shall go nameless. But he comes up and he was so petrified because we were hot and everyone knew it that he didn't even want to call us to come up. Of course, he's a studio musician down in Nashville. He's terrified that if he gets caught up in something, he will lose his career, right? Because back then it was different. And so he ends up showing up at our door unannounced,
Well,
wearing
no,
a
well, no, hold on. Let me
suit.
let me let me stop you right there. He had called earlier in the day and said he was coming, but I forgot. I
Oh,
forgot, and he came knocking at the door, and I had forgotten he was coming, and the knocks kept getting louder and louder and louder, and we thought this was it. This is the end of the story here.
he
And it
was in a
turned out
rental car
he was in a
and had a
rental car,
suit
and
on.
Oh my God.
and so we ended up saying, okay, this is it. We're going to go down, and we answered the door, and it was our friend from Nashville, and it was a no
We were
concern whatsoever. But
upstairs trimming. We were
yeah,
upstairs trimming when he came. We're like peeking out the windows, trying to see what the hell's going on. He's just down there knocking like crazy. It's like,
knocking
okay,
hard.
let's walk on down. This is it. And literally, that's how paranoid we were. Because obviously, if they were going to come get us, it wouldn't have been one dude in a suit knocking. But we had been hearing from our friend that was the admin assistant at the DEA office that we were super hot. We were just eking out this last harvest, like trying to get to the end. And then here's a rental car in the driveway. We're just losing our shit. We go down. This is it. Going on.
It's funny because when we talk about how we can all relate, I think that this is something that happened to every grower at that time.
Oh,
I
yeah.
I have a similar story where a friend, so this was before cell phones, right?
Yes.
A friend is in the neighborhood, so he just stops by my house and knocks on the door. And
Terror.
I'm like, who the hell is knocking on my door? Like no one ever, I lived in the country, no one ever comes here, and I totally thought it was the cops.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, I put things away because there's weed like real close to the door even, and so I go to the door and I'm like, and it's my friend Brian. And I say, Brian, what? I cursed him out. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing coming to my house? He didn't know I grew. he was just being friendly. He was in the neighborhood. He knew I smoked weed. We always smoked weed, but he had no idea I grew. He knew where I lived. He was in the neighborhood. He stopped by. I completely freaked out on him. And so it's like, I feel like every grower back in that day had that scare that who's knocking on my door right now?
Yeah, and back then it didn't just give you a slap on the hand and 10 grand and you're out of trouble. It was jail.
In Kentucky for a long time.
No doubt.
That's the thing that and Kentucky, it is a hotbed for cannabis though. It has a long history in cannabis. It's kind of like a weird situation. You're in the South where cannabis is really frowned upon, but I mean, they've been growing good weed in Kentucky for a long time.
I think they made like a comedy movie about that. You guys remember that one? I'll have to see if I can Google it real quick.
Yeah, do
Well, you all need to look at the Cornbread Mafia. Gabby, I sent you some info, just a little bit of info on them. And I mean, they are the backbone of American cannabis production, the Cornbread Mafia.
And were you part of the Cornbread Mafia? Because I can
Well-
imagine that, right? Guys, doesn't she look like the Cornbread Mafia?
She does, doesn't she?
Here's your weed with some cornbread.
She fits the profile, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Well, I basically feel like we owe our careers to them. Because after Operation Green Merchant and 60 Minutes and all of the craziness, nobody would shop with us. And we hadn't been in business that long. We were in business maybe a year before
Right.
Operation Green Merchant. And so after that happened, nobody wanted to come except the Cornbread Mafia. And the Cornbread Mafia, I actually am friends with those guys today. They're in the hemp industry, as am I. And we interact a lot and we do business together at this time. But I've heard stories from some of the old folks, from the Cornbread Mafia since I've been in hemp. And I mean, we're talking about they would rent 3 different rental cars at 3 different locations to get to our place. And they would come with a horse trailer and fill
Right.
that baby up. And that's what kept us in business after Operation Green Merchant. If they hadn't still been shopping with us, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
Okay, well, let's just take a quick step back and start talking about Operation Green Merchant because it's such a.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay?
Can I ask you?
Somebody's
can I ask
at
you?
my door. I'm at my
It's the
office.
cops. Everybody. Shh. Don't say.
By the way,
anything.
I was wrong. It's Rolling, Kansas, not Kentucky.
One question from a European standpoint of view. Operation Green Merchant, as far as I know it, correct me if I'm wrong, was this big operation in 2001 or something? Or no, in the end of the 90s?
No, it was
which,
in the 80s.
No.
early-
In the
maybe
80s or
late
It was
80s.
like
okay.
1989, I believe.
On the-
Actually, it was about 1989.
That was Reagan era, right?
Yeah.
No, I think it was Bush, if I'm not mistaken.
Bush the first.
Yeah, Bush
Yeah,
the first.
actually, they shut down the seeds that came from Holland, also from Nashville, and Nashville was on the search list after this operation. As far as I know it. And can you explain a little bit about it for the European audience that maybe don't know what Operation Green Merchant was at that time?
Forget about the European audience. The 37-year-olds here don't know what Operation Green Merchant is. Remember?
Well, Operation Green Merchant was a situation whereby the police, the DEA, went around to these grow stores, ours included, and seized the records of the shipping records of people that were ordering things out of from our store and from other stores, and in so doing, they actually went to these people's homes and busted a lot of people, a lot of our customers, because they had our shipping records. they seized them. They had a court order to seize our shipping records, and that led to a lot of people getting arrested, and that happened nationwide. Where they seized the records of all these individuals that own grow stores, and they subsequently went and busted all their customers, or many of their customers, because they had ordered through the mail.
Oh, so it was mail order customers.
Mail order
It
customers.
wasn't walk-in customers. You weren't keeping
Well, it was
information
walk-in
from
customers too.
that walked
They
through
were
the door.
watching the store for walk-in customers, but they also had a shipping records that they had gotten during Operation Green Merchant. So they went after the people that ordered things, mail order through our company, and went to their homes and made arrests.
That was the freaking state of Kentucky wanting to inspect my office.
Oh, for real? I
For
told you it
real.
was the cops, right?
It kind of was.
Before we get back into Green Merchant too, I just wanted to point out, maybe one of the reasons that, like someone like me wouldn't know too much about it is because of how illegal everything was, previously, and how much, now it feels a lot safer to openly talk about these things, but, it's more recent that, people are able to, talk about, the things that they've done in the past that may not have been quite legal, without worrying about being penalized by it.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, let me ask you a question, Cosmic. Now I'm putting Cosmic on the spot. Okay? Do you know about Reefer Madness?
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't watched it. I've seen clips from it, but
Right, because I'm just wondering, like, when will people stop knowing about that stuff? Mm-hmm. That was obviously bigger than Operation Green Merchant, but yeah, I think it's important that we're doing this show to document this stuff so that the young kids and future generations know what happened. Operation
really,
Green Merchant. It was
the
a big
context
deal.
for how I know of Reefer Madness is it's a joke. It was this crazy piece of propaganda that the government put out, to basically justify illegalizing marijuana.
But now it's a joke.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't a joke.
Mm-hmm. So maybe the first
No,
time
it
that you
was-
heard about it, it was a little bit more serious. But for me,
It was serious as
the
a heart
context of
attack.
me hearing
for
about
sure.
that was.
Well, shall we discuss Operation Green Merchant before I have to go see the state reps and have them inspect my office?
Do you need some time to fill some body bags?
Thankfully, no. I am prepared.
Okay, so
Thank goodness.
Operation Green Merchant, it happened in about 1989, and John was telling us how the cops were watching the store and they seized records from like your mail order business because one thing, you guys actually had an ad in High Times.
Yes, we did.
And after thinking about it, I remember seeing that ad. It was in every single edition. And it was kind of like, holy shit, there's like a grocery store advertising in High Times, so.
We advertised because, we were going to go out of business if we didn't. And we also did a lot of guerrilla marketing. We'd take our little business cards and we'd go to the bookstores and we would tuck our business cards into the High Times and sneak them in. So when people
That's
bought,
such a great idea. I might have to
grow-
do that.
I remember going to all the stores and doing that. I take credit for that one. That was my idea. I'm happy to admit that.
we'd
I went
stick
to
them
all
in
the
the
st- I
grow
went to all the
books and
stores.
everything.
I went to all the stores locally, all the bookstores locally and around and about, and put a business card in every one of them. And what would end up happening is people would pick the magazine up, and the business card would fall out and go on the ground, and they'd pick it up. And I had people come in saying it fell out of the thing, and I looked down and saw it, and I was like, "Whoa!" And they picked it up, and sure enough, we got business from it.
That's funny.
Well,
You
we were
should've-
out in the middle of nowhere. There was no we were on Highway 44 out in rural Kentucky in some dump that literally when you walked, the floor was a little soft. And it was $300 a month, and I'll send you some pictures, Gaby, because I've got some pictures from that. But we filled it up with Pro Mix and Super Thrive and Echo and all the things, yeah. And that's where we were when Operation Green Merchant hit. And it took us totally by surprise. We walked in like same old, same old. We're there to work that day. And did John tell you how they came in and what happened? You want to tell that, John?
Yeah, what ended up happening is they came in, we hadn't been open very long. They came in and they presented Neville's catalog. It was the first thing they did. They said, we want to grow some of this. Can you help us out? And I was a little spooked. We were both spooked a little bit, but we let the conversation go on. Well, it turned out at that time, we only accepted cash, gladly accepted cash and credit cards, but we didn't accept any checks. That's a little inside joke. But anyway, yeah, we only accepted cash or cash or debit cards or credit cards.
And they had that catalog on a clipboard, FYI. Right,
exactly. They came in and showed us the catalog and said, we want to do this, want to grow this. And so long story short, they ended up wanting to pay with a check. And at the time, we didn't accept checks. And we made them, they said, well, okay, we'll come back with the cash. And they left. And at that time when they left, Bill Ross called us. And Operation Green Merchant had already started rolling from the East Coast to the West, and we were in the middle of the country. And he calls and says, Operation Green Merchant is going on. The cops are coming in, and they're trying to trip people up. And we had just had them in there, and we realized that this was a setup. And when they came back with their cash, we threw them out vociferously. We threw them out. I was screaming at the guy, saying, "Get the hell out of here!" And because we knew that they were the cops, we'd gotten the word from Bill Ross that the cops were coming into all the stores and trying to bust people and trying to get people in trouble.
And so he's an important part of both of our stories, right?
I know.
Bill Ross is an important part of both of our stories. So again, everyone, email billross@gmail.com, and that's not his email address. But yeah, I want to get this guy on the show because he's important, and
Bill, you've got to come on the show with Gaby. We want to hear your full story. We miss you.
I'm gonna make that into an Instagram clip.
Hey, so when the guys came in, they did have that catalog, Neville's catalog. It was on a clipboard, but they were also saying the word tomato. And they were doing it in that, the tomato thing.
But with hindsight, you didn't know that these guys were cops trying to set you up when they came in with the weed catalog and...
Well, I mean, not too long prior to that, everybody was selling Sensimilla tips in their stores. I mean, it had not been, and we had debated whether or not to sell Sensimilla tips because it was really the Wild West when we were going up to Worms Way. I mean, it was, in Martin's garage, and there was Sense Tips going, and people were talking about growing, and, and then by the time we opened our location, it was starting to feel a little bit more restrictive. But I do recall saying, do you think we ought to sell Sensimilla tips? We decided against it. They came in with their clipboard, and they didn't say the word marijuana, and they showed us the clipboard, but we weren't seeing, there was a deniability factor there. Now, the only thing they wanted to buy was a 250 milligram metal halide light, but we needed the money. And so we even debated, should we sell to them or not? And we decided it was okay to sell to them. And then they wanted to write a check. And we were like, no checks. And they got, dug in because they wanted that paper trail. And we were just as dug in because we didn't want their check. I mean, still
Bad
never
checks were a thing.
thinking, yeah. And so they left. We were like insistent they go to the ATM. The guy was pissed off that he had to leave. And so, anyway, by the time they came back, Bill had called, and we knew what was going on. So they
Right.
came up to they came up to check out. They're like, okay, we've got our money. And we said, we can't sell to you all. And we cannot sell to you all because we know you're growing marijuana. We started talking about it, and we realized you're really not growing tomatoes. And so they were infuriated by that, of course. And that's when John started like screaming. I was crazy too. I'm like chasing him out the front door. Get out! We're not going to serve any marijuana growers. And don't come back. I mean, fueled by adrenaline and knowing they were there to get us, right? So the adrenaline was just rushing. We're rushing them out. Fuck you! Don't come back, you marijuana growers, knowing we're being recorded.
Do you think any of your other customers were in the parking lot and heard that and were like, "Oh, well, I guess we got to leave"?
I don't think there was anybody else.
No, actually, it was dead. They were the only quote customers. Yeah, it was a wild
And then
time.
I didn't want to
It really
interrupt
was.
earlier, but just to clarify, when you said Sensimilla tips, it's like grow tips, right? Or not tips of colas?
No, the magazine Sensimilla tips.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Again, Cosmic's too young to know about all this
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, I know about high times. I
Yeah.
don't.
He missed the episode with Tom Alexander that we just recorded, which will hopefully be released soon. But Sensimilla Tips was before High Times.
Okay.
Well, actually, Sensimilla Tips, High Times had been around longer than Sensimilla Tips. Sensimilla Tips just like focused in on the growing, where High Times was off on a tangent of cocaine and this thing and that thing, and they were more of a lifestyle magazine. And Sensimilla Tips honed in directly towards the cultivation aspect of the magazine. But High Times was out first, and Sensimilla Tips came in later. But they were revolutionary, in their approach, because they gave hardcore information on how to cultivate. It was really revolutionary stuff.
How's Tom doing?
He's doing good. He's retired. So, he's just enjoying his life right now. I tried to convince him that he needs to get back in the cannabis industry, but he has no interest doing that. He did tell a funny story, which I'll quote here, was he got a job as a cannabis appraiser. And I think that's the greatest job. He'd go around to facilities and say, this is how much your weed is worth. And of course, you'd have to sample it to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so, people were paying him to tell them what the value of their product was, which I thought that was a pretty cool story.
What a job.
Yeah, right? I'm like, I like immediately looked on Indeed for a cannabis appraiser job because I got some
No, I
experience.
want that job.
So,
like a
but what I
good one
wanted
to
to
me,
ask
too.
you is, even though you turned the cops away, they still came back with the search warrant for your records?
Yes.
Yeah, and that started years of, being under investigation by the DEA. I mean, we were probably under investigation for 5 years, including garbage searched, and, it was rough. Talk about tension.
But you guys kept your business running.
Yeah.
And I mean, did your clients know that the DEA was on your stuff?
Yeah.
And they still kept coming. They would just
No, they
do it
didn't come.
Oh no!
They didn't come. I mean,
Except
we
for the
had.
Cornbread Mafia.
That's right. Joe Keith Bickett and, all of those guys, man, they kept us in business.
Are you allowed to say that name? Do I need to delete that?
Oh, yeah, I'm allowed to say it. There's books out. Joe Keith
Oh,
has 2 books out.
oh, I'll have to check him out.
And he was actually in jail at that time, but his brothers and, family and everything, they were still shopping. And
So, we were talking about how the cops, um, the cops were watching you, and your clients knew it, and your business wasn't making money. So, I mean, how'd you guys keep it open?
Very
Was
carefully.
it
des-
just the Cornbread Mafia?
desperate times call for desperate measures.
That's all you want to say? Let people guess what you were doing? This straight-laced lady? So we'll just move on from that awkward pause.
We had to rabbit trail and do a few things to keep our money together.
Yeah, there were more body bags.
There could have been some more body bags, yes.
Oh my God, that's funny. And I mean, you guys still have, or the store still exists under a different name. Like, when did things change, or did they ever change, where it became like people were coming in and feeling safe? Because, like, to give you an example, I started growing in, I think it was 1990 or 1990 into 91. And that's when I went to Ross's shop for the first time. And he was super on edge because Operation Green Merchant just happened.
Yeah.
And so, like, his rules about, conversation were well known. He was super uptight. So, but, he survived Operation Green Merchant
Yeah.
and, kept his stores going for many, many years. What happened to you guys after Green Merchant?
Well,
Well, I'm trying to
it
think.
was
What did
rough.
happen after Green?
And I mean, we already know that there was more body bags, but I mean, the store stayed open.
Yeah.
So,
We just stayed open and plodded along. There was some 60 minutes thing, which was unfortunate, and that kind of made things worse for a minute. But as
did
time
it focus on
passes,
Kentucky?
no, it didn't. It was just a general, expose. But it took a while. I mean, we never advertised in High Times again. And just after about, a year or so, people just started assuming it was okay again and they wanted their stuff. And I mean, within a few months, it started easing little bit by little bit. And
Yeah, it's really weird.
eventually,
I wish because even I don't know enough about it, and that's why I wanted to get you guys here, but it was really heated for like a year, and then it chilled out. Like, everyone was paranoid that the grocery stores were being watched, but they weren't being watched so heavily at that point.
well, the cops were coming in a lot trying to entrap us.
A
That was
lot.
ongoing,
Yeah.
like nonstop. And that was really difficult because you just stayed so on edge and paranoid. And that also had you pissing customers off too, because, the boundaries were so strong. And, we were on edge, as were other store owners too,
We were
because,
throwing people
you
out
were
left and right.
constantly, yeah. And so
Yeah, we
you're
were throwing
losing
people out left and
legitimate
right.
money too, but legitimate as
Yeah,
in
there was no
people,
legitimate money. It's just the money that wasn't the cops, right?
right. But
So,
There
yeah,
is no
and
such
then
thing.
we
There
moved,
is no such thing as legitimate money.
and then we decided to go down to Nashville, and we opened a second location in Nashville. And that was, we moved down there at the very end of 91 and opened that location. And that was actually a welcome reprieve from all the drama and constant feeling of, being watched, because we left town, and it really eased things up a lot for us on our end. Now, we left a couple people up in Kentucky managing our store, and we had some more drama up there, and they were still after us. I mean, we had a couple people that we knew that got in trouble for things not connected to us, and they were trying to entrap us and throw us under the bus in an effort to save their own skin. So we
Talking about
had that
Lou.
going on. Yeah, Lou.
Yeah.
He got
Yeah.
arrested for coke. And then
Yeah.
also Steve's brother,
Right. Right.
that was a thing. And then it just sort of fizzled. Like, I would say by around 92 or 93, it just started really fizzling. I actually think the fact that we had moved out of state helped that a lot, even though we still had a store. We had a guy that was running our store that got arrested for coke because, that was the 80s and early 90s, so it was coke, right, everywhere.
Big
And
time.
after he left, and that, we had people up there that weren't doing anything, and it just fizzled. Thank goodness. And then we were down in Nashville, and it never really reared its head after that. And we stayed real tight, but we didn't go back to that sort of thing. And then we were down in Nashville with a store, and, had a really nice store. It had a huge grow room. And we got some press down there, some good press. We were on like country music television, weren't we?
Yeah.
Remember they,
We had news organizations come in and shoot pieces on us, and you had all sorts of good press.
and part of that was just our marketing, because after Operation Green Merchant, we became really adamant about straddling and, straddling that garden center, at least in looks. And instead of just being this grow shop, we started pursuing legitimate organic growers, which back then, that was out of the box. People weren't growing organically. And so we changed our marketing a little bit, and we tried to soften who we were. And even
Right.
though that didn't change who we were, it softened how we appeared. And really worked hard at looking like upstanding, wholesome garden center owners versus the grow shop vibe. And I think
Scumbags.
that helped us a lot, where it was just appearances. And we got, like, I started sending out some press releases trying to generate good press. And remember, I was a paralegal at that time too. And so, I kind of understood some things about how to move forward. So we changed our name, we softened our marketing, we actually donated some equipment to Chili Pepper Magazine. Remember that? And we
Right.
met the editor, and we got him to start growing hydroponically indoors like habaneros. This was the beginning of the hot sauce and hot chili pepper time. And
Right.
that was a unique thing. And we were like, okay, we need to go after these people, because then we can say, oh, well, chili pepper growers are using this. And we started advertising in Chili Pepper Magazine and pursuing that market. And briefly had sold a bunch of hot sauces too. And, that's when David Ittle, he got into brew and grow around then. Everybody was trying to soften a little bit and get a variety of customers coming in that weren't just growing, in order to just lessen that intensity and lessen your exposure. And we did a lot of that. We worked with Hydrofarm and I think Diamond Lights about changing their instructions.
Right.
And we didn't want those instructions on, the products. So instead of, this automatic 12 and 12, it's like if you're growing a photoperiod sensitive plant, such as chrysanthemums, then you want to change your lighting schedule. And we did a lot of groundwork for the industry to help the industry soften their image after Operation Green Merchant and move into a different direction.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. We were talking to Jorge, and he told us that Hydrofarm used to advertise in his book. The weed book, not the straight book, the weed book.
Yeah.
And for me, it was really shocking to hear that because when I got into the industry years later, Hydrofarm was so paranoid. They were like the grow shop during Operation Green Merchant. They were trying to absolutely separate themselves from anything cannabis.
Right.
So, Operation Green Merchant had a big change on them.
It had a profound effect on everybody and how we actually ran our businesses, how we marketed, what we did. We many of us spun our wheels and spent money on markets that really weren't going to help make us successful in an effort to just diminish this one note situation we had going on in our stores. Sometimes it was successful, sometimes it wasn't successful, but we pursued a lot of that for years. And I ended up speaking at one of the International Hydroponic Society meetings. I think that was in the later 90s, about marketing and how to have a wholesome marketing presence but still meet your customers and reach your customers. And I know not everybody did that, but that's what I wanted to do, and that's what John wanted to do, and also we felt like that's how we could stay safe and have longevity.
Hey Nancy, I know you have to leave in a little more than 15 minutes, so what I want to do is I want to give you a chance to tell us more about like the present, what you're doing in your CBD company, and then John can hang around as long as he wants. But I do want to make sure that we get a second to talk about what you're doing. So I know that you've moved on and you're not doing the grow shops anymore, but John told me that you have a CBD business. And I wanted you to talk about that for a minute, just to let us know like what you're doing today. And also, I wanted to let you know that we're making a new show that's focused on just medical patients. So this story is kind of, funny old stories, about, body bags and water leaks and stuff like that. But I want to make a more serious show when we talk to people that cannabis has saved their life or significantly impacted their health. So being that, this is the business that you're currently in, I wanted you to encourage people to contact us. And this goes for everybody that's listening to this podcast. Want to encourage medical patients to contact us so that they can tell their story on our show.
I would love to do that. And I actually feel like I have some personal stories as well about how cannabis and mushrooms have literally changed my life and saved my husband's life. So I will look forward to having an opportunity to talk about that. I got together with one of my best friends and neighbors. Our kids were playmates and we were next door neighbors. And when hemp was legalized federally, Kentucky started their program in 2014, and I really wanted to do something. And I started selling CBD at New Earth, which I still own New Earth in Kentucky. And I started doing cannabis education classes, and they were packed. It was unbelievable, the excitement. And my brother and I were partners at that time, and he did not want to go the hemp route, and I did. I was, definitely very focused on pursuing hemp and thinking I would then get into the cannabis industry as things switched over. And he wasn't interested in doing that. So in 2018, I sold New Earth to my brother, who still owns it. Him and my nephew run it now, and they're doing a fabulous job. I actually have a hemp dispensary within walking distance of them, as well as a couple others. So I opened One Love. At that time, it was called One Love Hemp Dispensary with my friend Jana. And then it's since transitioned to One Love Cannabis Company. We initially were just selling CBD. We started with a 6-foot case. We took over a second location of New Earth that my brother didn't want to run if I wasn't partnered with him, because it was another store to cover, and frankly, it wasn't a busy store. And I took that location and I turned it into the first One Love location. And the first month we were open was insane. You would have thought we were selling THC. We had people just coming in droves. We were the first one in Louisville, plus we used the word dispensary, which in 2018, funny now, but it was edgy. And it just took off. And I was fortunate because I did have a reputation as being a valuable cannabis connection, and really knowing cannabis. So I was a legitimate person for people to go to for information. So we started One Love and rode the hemp wave, had a great time, learned a lot. In 2019, things started kind of going downhill with hemp. It was just oversaturated, and people weren't seeing the results that they had hoped they would see with CBD. Obvious reasons, because a lot of times patients and people need THC. So in 2020, when COVID hit, we were shut down here in Kentucky, and we were just doing curbside service, but that's also when we started getting Delta 8 THC. Now the market has transitioned so much that we're truly, although we sell lots of, CBD today, the main part of our business is THC and selling hemp-derived THC at legal limits, which is 0.3% or less by weight. And a few years ago, I launched the gummy brand Gummy Girl, which John used to call me Gummy Girl all the time. And
Because you were making edibles from the beginning with your butter.
Yeah. And so that, is just full circle, because from the time I was a kid, I was making edibles. And now I've got a brand, Gummy Girl, and I've got the thing that makes Gummy Girl different, I guess, is they are heavily terpene infused. Our manufacturer says he has never seen anything on the market with as many terpenes as we use in our formulas. And we have a lot of outcome type formulas like Calm and Relax and Euphoria. And then 2 years ago at Canadelic in Miami, we launched Myco Girl. And fun fact, Myco Girl, that name comes from John and I's son, Alec. He named Myco Girl. And those are a line of functional mushroom and cannabis gummies that are formulated to use with microdosing protocols. And so we have 4 different SKUs that we have developed: Inspired, Lifted, Daily Boost, and Grounded. And you can use those alone, or, they are specifically, we also have a proprietary stack that we formulated to stack with your dosing. So we don't sell active mushrooms ourselves, but we believe in the healing power of all mushrooms, and definitely believe in the healing power of microdosing and psychedelics for brain health and wellness. And so we developed and have formulated and sell Myco Girl now.
That's awesome.
We have 3 dispensaries in Metro Louisville with a focus on health and wellness and wholesome values. I mean, we really believe that cannabis is a family value, and that families are safer, healthier, and better when using cannabis and plant medicine. So we try to educate people and teach them how to feel their best and have the best life they can by using plant medicine.
That's very
awesome.
well said, Nancy.
Wow.
Well, and I mean, here I am, I'm 66 years old. I've had 5 kids. I've done them, I'm a mom, I'm a grandparent. And in a lot of ways, you all have been kind of laughing like, you don't look like a weed grower, but I am a very traditional person in a lot of ways. And after seeing my mother suffer and die from cancer, and seeing the inequity in the health, in the health industry, my husband is a long-term chronic Lyme patient who has been nearly disabled for over a decade. And I have a couple kids that are neurodiverse. And guess what? Nobody's coming to save us. Nobody has any answers. But over the years, I've been able to really help myself and my family feel better and be healthier and have better lives by learning how to, use strains and dosing and microdosing. And I'm just trying to share that with the community here.
I really appreciate that you are doing that, and I'm sad that you have to leave soon, because now we just got to the part of the show where instead of being silly stories, you started being very inspirational. So we'll have to have you to come back and focus more on that.
I have some amazing stories. I mean, I know a
That's what we're
guy
about.
that was a long time, he's been a long time customer of New Earth, and then now One Love. He literally got off the liver transplant list. My husband, Vance, I was told by his doctors that they were giving up on him and he should be prepared to not be driving, and I needed to have a lineup of someone to watch over him when I was at work, because his cognition had been so destroyed by tick-borne illness. And he's back. He's working 3 days a week. He wired up our hot tub.
It takes some cognition to do that.
It sure does. And I could just tell story after story of people that we have helped. And so it's been a real honor to be in this, wide open THC market and have the freedom to formulate the things that we feel like are needed, like the Myco Girl Inspired. I formulated that for autism and ADHD. And it's lion's mane, cordyceps, a little bit of delta-10, Delta 9, little bit of Delta 9, and sativa terpenes. And we have all sorts of products like that we've personally formulated for different outcomes. My business partner is a MS patient who is entirely symptom-free as a result of lifestyle changes, including cannabis use. So that's our passion today.
Well, that's amazing, and like I said, I hope you will connect us with some of those people. You know, maybe we can get you to put something in your store, like a little postcard thing saying, "Hey, if you want to tell your story,
That's a great idea.
these guys want to hear it." And I want to encourage you and everyone else to just make a video. You know, make a video. Stand. You know, like we won't be able to interview everyone, right? Because we want lots of people to tell their stories. We want everyone to have a place to tell their story. And to be honest with you, I don't know how to interview a cancer patient. I can't relate, and I just feel like I'm going to sit there really quiet, just saying how sad it is that they're sick and how great it is that cannabis is helping them. But I just feel like people should just send us their stories. Get in front of your phone, you know, maybe write a couple of bullet points down and tell us the stories about how cannabis has saved your life.
Wow,
or
I
improved
wonder
your
if
life.
we could do some with our customers. Let's connect on that. Let's,
Do it in the store.
definitely stay in touch and
If somebody
connect
wants to
on
tell the
that.
story in your store, they could do that. Hey,
And,
before I let you go, you only have a couple minutes, and I tend to dominate the conversation sometimes. I want to make sure that Cosmic and Sasha don't have a question for you before you leave.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, my mother is a cancer patient survivor through cannabis, through the Rick
Oh,
Simpson oil,
wow.
to the very potent one. And she's still alive. We have to talk a lot. On the next, I hope you can join the next time about the. We could talk now like an hour about this, endocannabinoid system, entourage effects, how anandamide goes into the body and search for the cancer cells and destroys them. And, some form of cancers are, you can say with cannabis, some you cannot. It's just like that. But cannabis works not only against cancer. It is a miracle plant.
It
But also the
is.
plants that the sicknesses that it can't cure, it still can be medically beneficial as far as psychologically,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah,
so
dealing with
Just
things.
just comfort,
Well,
just comfort for the patient. I
right.
mean, if nothing else, just to make them
I
comfortable.
mean, they give pain medications to people, right? So this is,
right.
you know,
I mean, you're talking about sleep, mood.
diet,
So, yeah.
right?
Well,
Like so, even if it's not gonna say stop certain cancers, if you're on chemo, it helps you feel better, right?
Improve your
it
life,
does.
definitely.
Anyway, Nancy, I think I can hear the cops knocking on your door.
They're literally ringing the bell right now as we're speaking. That's why I look distracted, but
Oh,
thank you
thank you
all
so much,
so
Nancy.
much. It
We're gonna
was
talk
Nancy, see
again
you
soon.
later.
awesome.
So, John, I wanted to, before we let you go, see if you had any more crazy stories like moving weed in body bags and water leaks and anything else funny that you
Well, let's
wanted to
see
tell
what I
us.
got here.
Oh, go ahead, Sasha. Let Sasha ask you a question.
John, what strains have you been growing from Neville? Can you remember from the seed bank which strains have you been going
Well,
on in
we
these
were
times?
we were growing Northern Lights 5 crossed with Skunk 1. We were growing um, Hindu Kush. We were growing let's see, from Neville. What else? Primarily the Northern Lights is what did the best for us indoors, because it was a nice
Mm-hmm.
short compact plant that utilized space really efficiently. That was what we grew mainly. Um, Hash plant, we grew some hash plant. But mainly it was the Northern Lights. That's what that's the lion's share. And of course I had that Emerald Fire that we did before the Northern Lights, which was just spectacular. Like Gaby, like you with the chem dog, it was bag seed, something random, but it was just spectacular. So good, so good. I'd give anything to have that back in my hand. Well, in
Tell us about you.
2007, I got arrested for growing marijuana, and they confiscated $600,000 from me, and it was the second largest indoor grow operation in Tennessee, in Kentucky, and CNN was there. I was on CNN, and it was a wild thing. I was growing, and I had been growing for several years, and I was doing really, really well. And I had this guy who was a quote, quote, friend that was taking care of my property. He was cutting my grass and just did other maintenance and stuff for me. And he, he came to me and said, "Listen, I want to grow some marijuana." I mean, I had told him that I was growing after many years of him being a friend of mine. I told him what I was doing. And he begged me to help him do it. I was like really resistant. I didn't want to do it. So he said, "Listen, we are broke. I got a baby on the way, blah, blah, blah. Can you please help me out?" So I reluctantly agreed to help him grow under the conditions that he would, of course, tell no one, and that I could get his harvest and be able to move it, and also I would get half the profit. So I helped him out. I taught him how to do it. Well, unbeknownst to me, without him telling me, he turned around and was helping. As I was helping him, he was helping another guy to grow as well. It turned out that guy went out to a bar one night and picked up some chick, and she had some legal problems of her own, and he didn't know it, and he brought her back to his grow show and showed off his grow show. Well, she had legal issues of her own and ended up turning him in to the police. And when he got in trouble, he turned my friend Brian in, and Brian turned me in. And they called me the big fish. And when they caught me, they called me the big fish. And they caught me with $600,000 cash, and they seized my properties. And I had a building that I was growing in. I had like an old school building that I had renovated and made into a grow operation. It had like 13 lights and drying area and all this kind of stuff. And it was really a very elaborate setup. And yeah, that's where they arrested him.
But you were telling us about how you taught your friend how to grow, and at the same time, he was teaching somebody else how to grow. And then there was this girl that, was getting in trouble or something.
This was in '07, and what happened is on the day that I got busted, I picked up my friend who was a partner at the time, and I would typically pick him up, and we would drive to my building. And on this particular day, I picked him up, and he's really sharp, and he said, "John," he said, "I think we're being followed." And I was like, "Oh, you're just paranoid." I literally just blew him off like he was just being overly paranoid. And I said, "John, I'm really sure of it." And so we did it like a circuitous route to get to the place, and to see if anybody was following us. And I determined that at that point nobody was. And so at that point we pulled into the driveway of my building. And when I did, I clicked the clicker to open up the garage door. And as soon as the garage door popped open a little bit, bam! These people, these plainclothes cops with badges and stuff and guns pulled up to our car, my truck, I should say, and held us at gunpoint and said, "We have a warrant for your arrest. We have a search warrant for your building." At that point, they proceeded to search the building and everything. And they found all the lights. Of course, it was pretty evident what was going on. I had like 12 lights, and a veg area, which would have been 13 lights, plus a clone area, which had been 14, about 14 overall lights, which at the time was a big operation. And I was probably getting about, 15, 20 pounds every 2 months. and we were rolling. I was doing really well. I mean, selling all the pot for $5,600 a pound and just rolling. And then they came and arrested me, and it was on CNN. It was on the local news. It was all over the newspapers, and it's still on the internet. If you look it up, you can find a little blurb about it. Um, but yeah, it was very dramatic. And in '09, I got out of jail. I did 2 years in jail, almost 2 years. Got out of jail and started having seizures because I wasn't smoking marijuana. I was prone to seizures and didn't know it. My sister had them. My brother had them. Lo and behold, I started having them when I wasn't smoking marijuana. And, so I started smoking marijuana again. I haven't had a seizure since 2009. Back in the day, we were building all our own lights, to get started. There were no grow stores, so we had to go. I went to a lighting supply place and bought bulbs, MS 1000 Sylvania bulbs. I can remember clearly what they were, huge bulbs. And, we bought the I bought the components, ballast and the wiring and capacitors and all that, and just built my own. I became somewhat of an expert at how to build lights. And so that's how I got started. Literally, there were no grow stores, so I just literally put the stuff together myself. So that was kind of interesting. The books that we read, I had Ed Rosenthal, Mel Frank, Rob Clark. I got a lot of information from High Times, and yeah.
Did you ever make any seeds yourself?
I did. I did that before I got arrested in '07. I did a cross of some Northern Lights with some Black Domina. That's
Oh
another one
yeah.
we have with Black Domina, and I crossed Northern Lights with Black Domina. And I don't know how it came out because I went to jail, and some people that I knew that had gotten the seeds from me, they grew them out while I was in jail, and they said it was fire. That's the only
Mhm.
real breed. I did a little breeding back in the '80s. I crossed a couple things, but I really
Mhm.
I don't consider myself a breeder by any means.
Mhm.
I've
Yeah.
just been a grower all my life. Is what I've done, But I certainly got my feet wet with breeding, and I appreciate those that are really good at it. It's not something I feel like I've ever been really good at. You need a lot of space to do it, and or preferably you do, and I've just I've always devoted my space to clones and just turning over crops.
Just another one, what kind of things were your favorite back then and today? Maybe if you consume cannabis still, what kind of things do you use on a regular basis, or what are your favorites? Strains, cultivars, let me say like that.
Well, you know, I like the old school stuff, like the Northern Lights and the hash plants and the Black Dominas and the Super Skunk. I really like the
Mm-hmm.
Diesels, those things. Um, but I'm not growing right now. I had to get out of it. I live in the southeast right now, so I'm in a
Mm-hmm.
prohibition state, so I don't grow right now. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really prefer the old school stuff. What is that?
A
Tissue
seed.
culture?
What I
Yeah.
wanted to show you, Black Domina. I
Oh
got the seeds
wow,
from my buddy Will, and I'm
yeah,
sprouting them in a little water. You can see from this angle the root starting to pop out of the seeds.
that's
That
awesome.
one you can't see as good, but yeah, that's the actual Black Domina IBL. And I got 5 of the seeds. I put 2 in, and then this is Cali Mist.
Oh, Cali
And
Mist.
also,
Okay, that's one of
yeah,
Neville's
you
big
can
ones.
see that it's now this is Simon from Sirius Seeds. He's the one that
Oh,
made that.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So
nice.
I've been having, and you can see how the seed is starting to crack.
Yeah.
So you can see it's
Absolutely.
starting to open. So with all the seeds that I've done so far, because they're old seeds, I've had to. I'm calling it a C-section. Some people call it a embryo rescue, but I think that's a little bit far for what I'm doing. But I'm soaking it in water and hydrogen peroxide solution for 24 hours, and then I'm peeling it open because I had the first seeds that I started from this batch. Um, I left them soaking for a couple days, and the root wanted to come out, but it
Couldn't
didn't have
crack it.
enough strength to break the shell. So, like
Right.
with two pairs of tweezers, I've opened it up, and I will share a photo. I mean, I'm just gonna put it in front of the screen, but that's the
Oh,
red
wow.
grape Lebanese. And so that one I
Nice.
saved by cracking open the shell manually after it's soaked for a couple of days. So today I'm gonna
Nice.
do the same with the Black Domina and the Cali Mist. So when you mentioned it, I was like, oh, let
Gabby,
me break it
let's
out.
hope. I hope it's a male.
I mean, we have two here, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna start
I
the
hope
other
one
seeds
of them
too.
is a male. If
Yeah,
it's two males, it's even better.
yeah.
All,
I mean, I think, no, honestly, I'm definitely hoping for one male and one female because it's an IBL. So, then I just cross it together again, and I can get, 1,000 seeds instead of just the
yeah,
five
of
that I
course.
have, right? But
Yeah.
I got five of these seeds. I put two in. It looks like they're both gonna germinate. So once I get those, in a container and growing like this, then I'm gonna plant the other three. I'm not saving them. The seeds are too old to save at this point.
Right.
So well, the way we're gonna save them is with tissue culture. So all these plants are gonna get tissue cultured. But yeah,
So are
since
you
we're
doing it?
mentioning the
Are
black
you doing a
lamina,
deep? Are you doing a deep dive on tissue culture these days, Gabby?
I'm trying to do a deep dive on tissue culture. We've had a couple of guests who do tissue culture. Yesterday we did the way we grow with Jesse from Mothership Labs, and he
Right.
was, you know, he owns a tissue culture company. We did a show on Your Weed Stories with Phil from Canomic, and he's another tissue culture expert. And then our own Cosmic, he does meristem tissue culture at home. So I've done nodal tissue culture before. Nodal tissue culture is really easy, but now I want to learn how to do meristem because I feel like it's really important for cleaning up the plants
Right.
to be. And I've been intimidated, but now hearing that Cosmic just does it in his home, and Jesse from Mothership Labs said he would help me. You know, I'm gonna get it done. So I'm gonna pop some meristems out and start growing plants that
It's
way.
always I think it's always an empiric process. Something that you have to go through. You do it, and it's empiric. That means empirism, that you continue, you repeat the process all the time until you master it. I mean, master it until you know the recipe. Like Phil told in the podcast that you have 5% of success on the beginning, then you have 10%, then you go up to 95% because you change the whole the system how you do it. Yeah, you adjust it, right? So this is the future of keeping genetics alive. If you
So
don't think
Sasha,
about, yeah.
do you do tissue culture?
Not yet, but I'm also gonna learn very. This year, I'm planning
He's
to
gonna
go
come to the States and we're gonna do a
to the
class
States,
together.
yeah, to do a class, yeah. And
And
because
Yeah.
specific for cannabis, I can do. I have some contact in Ljubljana, Slovenia, which is a doctor. She's made her doctor degree on a case of hemp. She did nodal tissue culture with hemp plants. Yeah, that is the closest I got somebody that is professional in tissue culture. But she did it on hemp plants and it is nodal. So what you do USA now is advanced in any way, in this way that I can go to a class, learn the meristemic approach, that you take the meristem, not the node, and
Hmm.
that is the base of everything. Then from that I will stay. This is my pension. You know what I mean? This is the last thing I have to learn besides beekeeping before I die. Like something like that.
Well,
Because I,
there
I
is
do traditional cloning, now in my facility, but this is just the not the last step.
well, tissue culture is the wave of the future. Although it's, as you both know, it's been used in the horticultural industry forever and ever. So it's not new.
For
But
100 years, yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's kind of new to the cannabis industry, but it's by no means new by any stretch of the imagination. But
yes.
I think it opens up a whole world of possibilities and a way to keep a library of various genetics without taking up a lot of space. It just makes sense. Really does. By the way, I wanted to give a shout out to Kevin Jodry. I just wanted him to know that I remember him giving me seeds when I went to his Wonderland nursery a few years ago, and I just wanted to thank him for that and tell him that they came out really good. And I just wanted him to know that I haven't forgotten. Thank you very much.
I think that's awesome. Hopefully that this show will be a place where people get to give thanks. Like I said earlier, I wanted everyone to, in the comments when we did the show with Jorge, is thank Jorge, because I just think it's important for people to be able to do that. Like when they see somebody at a Spanibus or one of these other cups, what they want to do the most is just say thank you. So I think it's cool that you said thank you to Kevin.
Well,
The
that's
one that
about
one you were in the beginning of the podcast. You were talking about getting really high. On the second time you were smoking in a hot box, right? Uh,
right,
you know, I can add it to you. Like my cousin traveled to Africa in the 80s. He went to Ghana. You know, and he had
right.
a girlfriend which was like yeah, she was half African. She lived in Yugoslavia at that time, but they went to Ghana, right? So he was a weed smoker at that time already, yeah, and he wanted to get some weed. So in Ghana, at that time in the 80s, he got some weed through a French guy which was living there. And this French guy, when he gave him the weed, it was like my cousin said it was in powder and it was brown, and it smells like some herb, some real, and it was very harsh to smoke. But my cousin
Hmm.
said it was so potent weed that he got a trip from it. He was like, and the Frenchman told him how much he has to put inside. Like he told him that just a little bit, to smoke, just a little. And my cousin said, "What? I'm smoking joints, man, no problem, yeah." And then when he smoked that, it was so potent. It was maybe some sativa or something, which was so different from what he knew, because he was mostly smoking the stuff that we had in Yugoslavia at that time, which is not very high in THC. I mean, it was THC, but not so high as the African, I
Right.
think, that he tried it there, right? So these things that you got your first, because this was in the 70s when you had your first experiences with cannabis, I presume, right? Uh, these were these kind of
Exactly.
chemotypes, I think, yeah, these kind of chemotypes of cannabis that had a total different character. I say always character for the wheat, of
Well,
effect. I say all, yeah.
one thing that I would tell you is a lot of people say, well, pot back in the 70s wasn't as strong as some of the today's genetics, and that's simply not true.
No, it's not.
Some of the Colombian Santa Marta gold that we used to get, which was just this gold resinous, almost amber colored resin all over it. And it had seed in it. Unfortunately, that's just the way it was back in those days. But you clean the seed out of this pot and you smoke this weed, and you literally felt like you were on acid. I mean, your eyes would get really red and you would get
Yeah.
really cotton mouth, real dry mouth. You'd go into a convenience store and everybody knew you were high, and you could just tell
Mm-hmm.
that you were high. And it was really, really potent. The Santa Marta Gold Colombian and the Thai stick and some of the Hawaiian that we used to get was just absolutely phenomenal. Really, really good. And a lot of people don't really realize that back in the 70s there was actually really good weed. There really was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It was it
the
was
media
different.
went out. Yeah, the media is like telling us 10 years ago, yeah, cannabis should not be legalized because the cannabis that our fathers and mothers smoked was like much less potent, which is actually bullshit, Like it
It's
was
not
so
true.
potent. Yeah. Yeah, it's not true.
I mean,
I
I
mean, they
I lived through
can
that
you cannot
era.
measure it.
I lived through
Yeah,
that era, and I can tell you unequivocally that's simply not true. I mean, sure, there was a lot of stuff out there that wasn't very good. There was a lot of garbagey
yeah,
weed out there, but I was
yeah.
fortunate to have contacts with people that had good weed, and or I was growing it myself. So I always had good weed, always, you know. So it's been in my life forever.
You
But
know, one one story that I could tell, and so the first thing that's funny is that this is the classic old timer story, right? Back in
right.
the day, we smoked the Panama Red and the Colombian Gold, and that stuff was so potent, right? And people of my generation, back a few years, we kind of laughed, when the OGs said that stuff. We're like, yeah, right, it just. But now, you know, I think, oh yeah, back in the day, we used to smoke the Chem Dog, and that shit would just rock you, And the Chem Dog, it tests very low in THC. If you're looking at a test result, you're gonna be like, this is crap. But that's because we don't understand everything about what makes you high with cannabis,
Well,
and
it's
so
interesting that the Ken Dog is a prime example of quality weed that came from a bag seed, and
yeah.
the numbers, the metrics of THC, the numbers that doesn't matter to me at all. It's all about the effect, and you can have something that's 16, 17% THC that'll just wipe you out, and something that's like
Hmm.
25 or 30% THC that doesn't do much to you at all. So that those numbers don't mean anything to me, and they never really
I mean,
have.
that's exactly the truth. Today, test results will show weed that's in their 30s, and the weed does not have nearly the potency of the weed that we used to smoke that was 18, 20, 21%.
I
Another funny
know.
story about the Chem Dog is, and I believe this is from Ben at IC Collective, but I'm not sure who it was. When cannabis first was like made legal and there was dispensaries, they used to harvest the Chem Dog early, because if you harvested it early, the test would show that it was higher in THC.
Oh,
And
okay.
if not, the tests were coming out at 18, 19%, and it was just considered unacceptable. So THC results, test results for cannabis, they mean almost nothing. Literally
Yeah,
almost
they
nothing. The
those
best
numbers
value in the
mean nothing to
testing
me.
is pesticides. The pesticide testing is valuable to know that you're getting a clean product.
Exactly. I agree with that. But yeah, times have evolved. It's come a long way since the early days when Nancy and I were growing. And I do have a story that I can tell you real quick about back in the 70s. We
Those are
had
our
some
favorite
plants
types of
growing.
stories.
We had some plants growing outdoors in 5-gallon pots, 5-gallon buckets, and I don't know, maybe a dozen plants, nothing elaborate, nothing big. They were outdoors, and they were, like I say, close to this little subdivision that we lived near. And we went to visit the plants one day and noticed that some had been taken off. Now, in retrospect, in all likelihood probably was deer, but we freaked out and thought somebody had found our plants. So we actually decided to move the plants from where they were. They were in 5-gallon buckets, so they were movable. But we moved them at 4 o'clock in the morning in the back of a truck, standing upright, a pickup truck, on a busy road. It was 4 o'clock in the morning because we wanted to make sure there was very few people out. And we're driving down this road, a very short distance, but a distance nonetheless, with these plants in this truck, driving in Kentucky to another location where we could move it that we felt was a little safer and wasn't as prone for people to actually stumble upon it. But we moved those plants in a truck without covering them, without leaning them down on their side or anything, just open air. We're moving them down a busy highway, and it was just amazing. We didn't get
I
caught.
just want to make sure we're not getting confused. This was in Kentucky, not when you were living in Mendocino County, right?
This was Kentucky
And I
back in like
mean,
1973 or four, something like that.
oh my God,
We were
that's so
ballsy.
funny.
We were
Ballsy
crazy.
and a
And
little
then,
stupid, right?
well, we were stupid. I mean,
Why
basically,
didn't you lay the plant? Why didn't you lay the plant in the truck bed and cover it? Because you didn't want to damage the plants.
didn't want to damage the plants. They were in full bloom, and we didn't. You know, you got to realize we were young and dumb. We didn't know any better. The thought of laying the plants on their side is something that didn't even occur to us. So, I mean, you
That's so
know, we
funny.
just went at 4 o'clock in the morning or 3:30 in the morning when there was little to no traffic, and just went for it. And we only had to go a couple of blocks. It wasn't like we were driving down a long road for a long period of time. We only drove like, I don't know, basically 2 or 3 city blocks, you know. But it's still really dicey in Kentucky, you know. I mean, it's crazy. At the Brewing Grow up in Chicago that Not So Dog used to shop at,
Yeah,
they
David
had
Little's store.
cameras. During Operation Green Merchant, they had put cameras in the light poles shining down where they could get people's license plate numbers. And they actually had installed cameras at his place, and he discovered them, and he told me about them. So that's
Oh,
another
he told me that
story.
story too. Yeah. Hold on a
It was a
second.
big pleasure, man. It was
It was a
nice to
great
meet you.
pleasure meeting you, Sasha. You're a great guy. I've been watching you guys for a long time now, and I'm really appreciative of the content you all are producing. It's really awesome.
Thank you.
John is
Thank you.
like
And
our number
Sasha,
one fan.
you're an astute observer of life in general, Sasha. You impress me. Good job on you, buddy.
Thank you. Actually, I see the same in you. You are a observer. You are also a plant lover. Yeah, you grew up in with plants, right? I mean, if you
Absolutely. I've
like,
been growing
yeah,
plants
yeah,
all my life.
all the same. We don't grow here cannabis only, you know. I grow everything. I will not
Yeah, I've
say
grown everything
it's
all my life. That's
everything.
what got me into cannabis. I was growing all sorts of plants before I started growing cannabis. And I was like, some of the books started coming out, and I'm like, what am I doing growing these house plants when I can grow pot, you know? Maybe make some money.
Of
And
course.
so I quickly turned my attention to that, and the rest is history.
John, I really appreciate you and Nancy joining us today. Those were some great stories. We'll definitely have to have you guys come back and tell some more. Definitely want to hear more about Nancy and all the patients that she's helping with her business. But it's been super great, and I really appreciate you. John is watching every single one of our live streams. He's always commenting on our live streams and sending words of positive support and stuff. So, yeah, I feel lucky that this podcast has brought us together, you know, and
Definitely.
pretty much every single time we do a show, I feel like we're making connections with such great people, you know, that we share similar stories, you know, like both of us and Bill Ross and everything. And so, again, I really appreciate you joining us today and
Well,
supporting us the way you do.
I thank you so much for having me on, and I'll thank you for Nancy as well, and really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, and I'd be willing to do it again anytime. If I think of more stories, I'll jot them down, and maybe we'll get together and do this again sometime. No big deal.
Great. Let's do that.
Fantastic.